There's a reason why Machiavelli didn't preach kindness or cooperation when it came to power. Because to win, truly win, you must understand the human ego, and then learn how to destroy it without lifting a finger. The ego is fragile, but it wears armor. It parades as confidence, hides behind arrogance, and fights like a cornered animal when threatened. But the Machiavellian mind doesn't confront ego head-on. That's what amateurs do. The true master doesn't attack. It dismantles, manipulates, and breaks the ego piece by piece until the person in front of you becomes disoriented, insecure, and most importantly, obedient. This is not about cruelty. This is about control. Because once someone's ego is cracked, they are no longer driven by pride. They are driven by fear, approval, or validation from you. That's when you win. To begin, create the illusion of superiority by giving them just enough rope. Most egos want one thing: to feel special. The Machiavellian understands this and feeds it deliberately, but not honestly. You don't confront their ego. You validate it temporarily. Compliment their intelligence, even if shallow. Applaud their small victories like their grand achievements. Let them feel above you strategically, because when people believe they are superior, they become blind to the threat you pose. They talk more, they reveal more, and worst of all, they underestimate you. This illusion creates vulnerability. You're letting them build their castle higher and higher, but you're also quietly removing the foundation brick by brick. Eventually, they'll fall, but they'll never see you coming, because you weren't the enemy. You were the audience applauding them. Next, praise their weaknesses as strengths. This tactic is psychological poison. The average ego has a few glaring flaws: insecurity disguised as confidence, impulsiveness disguised as decisiveness, cruelty disguised as toughness. Instead of calling them out, you weaponize those flaws by praising them. Tell the insecure person they're mysterious and humble. Call the impulsive one fearlessly spontaneous. Label the bully a strong leader who doesn't sugarcoat things. This does two things. It blinds them to their own weaknesses, and it deepens their attachment to those flaws. You've now created a feedback loop. Every time they behave foolishly, they think they're being powerful. They become easier to predict, easier to manipulate, and easier to lead straight into ruin. Their ego becomes a leash, and you're holding it. You must also use silence as a weapon. Most people panic in silence, and when someone's ego is fragile, they interpret silence as judgment. You don't need to insult them, argue with them, or raise your voice. You just need to withhold approval. They make a big statement? Say nothing. They brag? Just nod, then change the subject. They seek validation? Respond with calm indifference. You're not reacting. You're denying them the mirror they need to see their imagined greatness. Eventually, their ego will scramble to restore its reflection. They'll over-explain. They'll fish for compliments. They'll lash out. Each time they do, they're exposing just how weak their confidence really is. And all you've done is say nothing. That's power. Then turn their pride into a cage. Once someone's ego is inflated, you can weaponize it against them by backing them into a corner publicly. Let's say they've bragged about being calm under pressure. The next time pressure arises, you subtly remind the room of what they claimed. Didn't you say this kind of thing doesn't rattle you? Now they're trapped. If they show stress, they lose status. If they try to hide it, they collapse inside. Their own words have become a prison. Their pride has become your puppet strings. This tactic is devastating, especially when used in social settings. It creates internal conflict. Their ego tells them they must perform, but their reality won't cooperate. That tension eats away at their self-image, and when that image cracks, their whole identity can spiral. You can also reframe their achievements as accidents. You don't need to insult what they've done. You just need to twist the narrative. Let's say someone succeeded at something. Instead of giving direct praise, respond with, "Wow, the timing really worked in your favor," or "You're lucky that person helped out at the right moment." Each one chips away at their illusion of self-made success. It doesn't matter if it was genuinely impressive. What matters is that they now feel doubt. That doubt eats at the ego like acid. Because when an ego isn't certain of its greatness, it becomes fragile, desperate to prove itself again, and easily influenced. This tactic works especially well on ambitious people, because their ego is built entirely on perceived achievement. Undermine that, and you watch their confidence bleed out slowly, silently. Another lethal tactic is to mirror their insecurities without saying a word. First, you identify what they're insecure about. It's usually the thing they overcompensate for. The guy who never stops talking about money? Insecure about status. The woman who constantly brags about her looks? Fears aging. The friend who insists on being in control? Terrified of chaos. Once you've identified the core insecurity, begin reflecting it back. Gently, subtly. Look unimpressed when they flash wealth. Pause when they expect praise. Show more interest in someone else with the trait they pretend to have. You're not confronting. You're mirroring what they fear. Irrelevance, inferiority, exposure. The ego doesn't handle this well. It starts panicking in small ways, talking faster, reaching harder, overperforming. That panic leads to mistakes. And that's when you step in, not to comfort them, but to guide them. Because when someone's ego starts cracking, they don't need a friend. They need a lifeline. If that lifeline is you now control the person they're becoming. Finally, understand the power of private dismantling. Public humiliation can backfire. The Machiavellian understands that the most permanent damage happens in private. When you isolate someone from an audience, their ego has no allies. It becomes raw, vulnerable, naked. This is when you deliver quiet truths. You're not as respected as you think you are. Or that move you made, people saw through it. Say it calmly. Say it like you're helping. Never mock, never gloat. You're not an enemy. You're a mirror. And once they look into it, the image they thought they had shatters. That's when they'll listen. That's when they'll be ready to change or collapse. Either way, the ego is no longer in charge. You are. The first step to destroying the ego is creating doubt. But the second step, the real Machiavellian move, is making that doubt inescapable. Because an ego can recover from a single blow. What it cannot survive is a series of psychological cuts that bleed out its authority, its self-importance, and its imagined superiority, until all that's left is a hollow shell waiting for someone to fill it. That someone is you. This part is about escalation. The mind games now go deeper, subtler, and far more surgical. You're not just exposing the ego. You're now training it to seek your approval, to crave your validation, to depend on your cues to know whether it's powerful or pathetic. A key tactic is to withdraw recognition at the peak of their pride. This feels like emotional whiplash, and that's why it works. Let them have a moment of glory. Watch them revel in it. Encourage it even. Let their ego expand like a balloon, then, without warning, go cold. Change the subject. Walk away. Act distracted. Show no reaction. This interrupts their ego's reward loop. They expected applause, confirmation that their brilliance had landed. Instead, they get emptiness. The mind panics. Did I say something wrong? Was it not impressive enough? Suddenly, the pride becomes embarrassment, and that balloon? It deflates in silence. You've just taught their ego a lesson. You decide when their victories matter. Not them, not the world, just you. And once someone believes that, they'll start performing for your applause like a trained actor begging for a standing ovation. You should also question their intentions, not their competence. Weak egos collapse under insult. Stronger ones defend. But all egos destabilize under doubt about their motives. If someone's proud of being helpful, don't say they're bad at it. Say, I wonder if you help people because you truly care, or just because you want to be seen as good. If someone's proud of being loyal, say, do you think you're loyal or just afraid of being alone? You're not attacking what they do. You're questioning why they do it. This forces their ego into existential confusion. It creates a fork in their identity. Are they genuine or are they compensating? They'll deny it, but they won't stop thinking about it. And once someone starts questioning themselves, they're no longer confident. They're now in a loop of self-analysis, where you control the framing. From here on, every action they take becomes tangled in doubt. And that's where you move in, offering clarity, direction, identity. You've become their mental compass. Another way to break someone's ego is to constantly raise the standards without warning. If they pleased you yesterday, act unimpressed today. If they met expectations, raise them quietly. If they adapt, raise them again. The ego thrives on consistency. If it knows what earns praise or status, it can perform confidently. But if you break the pattern, the ego spirals. They'll ask, what did I do wrong? Wasn't that good enough? This creates a psychological imbalance. The more they try, the less sure they are of their results. Eventually, effort turns to desperation. And desperation is when the mask slips. It's when arrogance becomes insecurity, and when confidence becomes dependence. Now they're performing for approval, not pride. They're not in control, you are. Nothing punctures the ego like competition. So compare them to someone who threatens their identity. The person you compare them to must be close to their ideal self. If someone prides themselves on intellect, praise another person's genius in their presence. If someone sees themselves as charming, admire someone else's natural charisma. You don't need to be obvious. Just say things like, "It's crazy how effortlessly he leads the room, isn't it?" Say it casually. Say it like you're unaware. The ego won't process this as a compliment to someone else. It will process it as a threat to its identity. It'll feel like a challenge, an unspoken accusation. You're not enough. They'll pretend not to care. But internally, they'll start calculating, am I being replaced? Am I slipping? That panic leads to erratic behavior, overcompensation, envy, subtle self-destruction. And that's when the ego starts breaking without a single direct attack. You can also implant self-doubt through hypotheticals. If you make someone feel wrong directly, they'll resist. But if you suggest possibilities through questions, the ego becomes vulnerable. For example, do you ever worry that maybe people only tolerate you because they don't want conflict? These are traps. You're not making a statement. You're planting a seed. It doesn't bloom right away, but over time it takes root. And once it does, their ego starts feeding it. What if it's true? These thoughts spiral fast. And the more their mind wrestles with it, the more their ego frays. By the time they realize what happened, they'll be looking to you for answers, for guidance, for an identity that isn't crumbling. You've become their philosopher, their fixer, their truth. The most sophisticated ego trap is to expose their contradictions, then pretend you didn't mean to. Catch them in a contradiction, then act like you're just observing, not accusing. Didn't you say you hated gossip? But that story was kind of gossipy, no? Don't laugh, don't push, just say it and move on. Leave the dissonance hanging in the air like smoke. Their ego will try to ignore it, but the mind won't let go. You've shattered the illusion they've carefully crafted. And because you didn't force the confrontation, they can't lash out. Instead, they turn inward. They begin watching themselves, second-guessing, rewriting their own narratives to avoid exposure. This is the moment they stop being bold and start being cautious. And cautious people are easy to control. Finally, reward self-doubt and punish confidence. This one is slow poison, and it works best over time. Every time they show humility, self-doubt, or insecurity, respond warmly. Approve of it. Offer subtle encouragement. Every time they show arrogance, excessive pride, or superiority, withdraw. Show disinterest. Respond with distance. You're reprogramming them. Their brain begins to associate self-doubt with reward, and ego with punishment. They'll start lowering their voice, second-guessing bold claims, and filtering themselves through your presence. This isn't just breaking the ego. This is rebuilding their personality based on your unspoken rules. They're becoming the person you want them to be, without realizing they were ever manipulated. That's the Machiavellian masterpiece. You've now moved beyond attack and entered psychological training. You're no longer just breaking the ego. You're becoming its architect. Once a person's ego is destabilized, fractured by subtle doubt and quiet contradiction, they no longer move with certainty. They scan for cues. They begin asking, silently or aloud, "What do you think of me? Did I do it right? Was I impressive?" This is your moment. The goal now is not destruction, it's domination. You want their self-image to become dependent on your perception. You want to be the invisible god they perform for, the unspoken authority they measure themselves against. This is about programming, conditioning, making them look at their own reflection through the mirror you control. The ego is weakened. Now we turn it into a tool. Give them power, then watch what they do with it. Most people believe power reveals character. Machiavelli knew better. Power reveals ego. When you subtly place someone in a position of influence, even a fake one, their behavior becomes a blueprint of their psychological weakness. Let them lead a minor decision. Let them feel admired. Let them speak on your behalf once. Then observe. Do they become arrogant? Do they talk down to others? Do they begin believing they're your equal? If so, you've identified their ego's most fragile point. It cannot handle simulated power without bloating. And that makes them predictable. controllable, expendable. Now all you have to do is take that power away and they'll chase it like a child chasing a balloon in the wind. You've turned them into an addict, and you're the supplier. You can also publicly praise their opponent, while quietly praising them. This is one of the cleanest ways to fracture a person's ego alignment. In public, give recognition to someone they see as a rival. In private, tell them they are the real genius, just not in front of others. I had to highlight him this time. Everyone expects it. But between us, you're far more strategic. You've now created two levels of psychological conflict. They resent the public praise of someone else, and they crave the private validation you give, and will work harder for it. They'll never confront you. They'll try to earn more, impress you, and despise the competitor you pretended to favor. That inner chaos keeps their ego spinning in limbo. And when they can't locate a stable identity in the group, they cling to you for personal truth. You're no longer just in their mind. You've become the voice inside it. Master the double-bind compliment. This is a Machiavellian trap disguised as flattery. You praise someone while subtly undermining them, forcing their ego into paralysis. For example, I admire how confident you are, even when people misunderstand you. Or, you're so bold, it's almost reckless in a good way. Their brain locks up. If they accept the compliment, they also accept the criticism. If they reject the compliment, they look insecure. It's a perfect lose-lose for the ego. And while they sit there calculating how to respond, you've already taken control of the frame. This tactic is devastating in high-status social circles. One remark like this can make the most powerful person in the room second-guess themselves and look weak doing it. And all you did was praise them. Another psychological cheat code is to lead with confession, then extract theirs. People mirror vulnerability. If you want someone to reveal their fears, regrets, or shame, start by offering yours. Not real ones, just believable ones. Say, sometimes I wonder if I'll ever really be respected, even when I win. Watch what happens. The ego you've been peeling apart will finally let down its guard. They'll confess, yeah, I know what you mean. I feel that too sometimes. That's it, the wall cracks. And you've just extracted something no insult could ever force out. Self-awareness. Now they've exposed their wound. And once it's in the open, you can touch it whenever you want. All it takes is a look, a word, a silence, and they'll feel that ache again. You don't need weapons. You've built your own psychological trigger in their mind. You can also subtly reframe their identity through language. Every time you describe them, you're shaping their self-perception. Even if they resist it consciously, the repetition will slowly implant itself. Start using phrases like, you always take things to heart, or you're so intense about the smallest things. Say it jokingly, casually. Repeat it around others. Eventually, people around them will start agreeing, not because they believe it, but because they've heard it enough times. Now the target faces a dilemma. Fight back and seem defensive, or accept the label and reshape their identity. Most will eventually absorb it, and once they do, their behavior shifts to match the narrative. This is not bullying. This is identity warfare, and the ego never wins against a story told often enough. Another method is to mirror their style, then exceed it slightly. Egos need uniqueness. They need to feel special. So when you mimic them, then outdo them, they suffer an identity fracture. If they dress a certain way, elevate yours one level higher. If they use sarcasm, beat them with sharper wit. If they tell stories, learn to tell better ones. You're not mocking, you're shadowing, then surpassing. The ego doesn't respond logically. It responds emotionally. They're stealing my thing, or they're better at being me than I am. This creates internal panic. Do I need to change? Am I not enough? That fear leads to wild overcorrection, flashier behavior, awkward one-upmanship, desperate rebranding. You've turned their ego into a broken compass, constantly spinning, trying to find its true north. But the needle always points back to you. You must also take away their audience. Some egos only function when they're being watched, so strip them of that fuel. If they're used to performing in groups, isolate them. If they expect a platform, ignore their attempts at grandstanding. If they try to win a crowd, redirect the focus elsewhere. Egos that feed on attention wither in solitude. This is why many narcissists collapse in one-on-one settings. They can't perform anymore. They must be, and they don't know how. In those moments, they are not powerful. They're exposed, confused, small. You've taken away their armor, and all that's left is the scared child hiding inside. Finally, echo their own words at the right moment. The Machiavellian mind remembers everything and waits. When someone makes a bold claim, lock it away. I don't care what people think, or I never make emotional decisions. Later, when they contradict themselves, say softly, "But didn't you say?" That's it, no accusation, just a mirror. The ego cracks instantly, because it's now forced to see itself not through fantasy, but through fact. This tactic works best in moments of stress, when they're vulnerable and impulsive. You remind them they're not who they think they are. Now their pride becomes guilt. Their confidence becomes confusion. And in that confusion, you become the only stable point of reference. You no longer need to push hard. The ego is doing the work for you now. It's unraveling itself, knot by knot. And the only hand offering to untangle it is yours.